Hey y'all, before I start, a little bit of background. Was a complete noob when it comes to the Final Fantasy franchise. Believe it or not, my first introduction to the series was through Smash Bros. I was in line when I said I was a complete casual. When I heard about the remake and seeing a few clips here and there, I knew that this game would be monumental, especially after delving into the original game and its blocky looking graphics and PNG backgrounds. To understand the remake, we have to understand what makes the original so loved. The original Final Fantasy VII was monumental because it was the first Final Fantasy that a lot of Western audiences had access to. Besides the amazing technological and design advances, the story was loved like no other Final Fantasy story because of the complex issues that it dealt with. Everything from environmental issues, eco-terrorism, parenthood, deserting soldiers, political and corporate corruption. I mean, this game deals with more real-life situations and themes than the Casino movie ever did. And how about we start on that? The story. Now, obviously, this isn't an exact remake of the original, given that the remake will be handled in a multitude of parts. And I kinda have a problem with that, just a tiny bit. One of the main issues with this gorgeous game is that there is an obvious attempt at trying to stretch what was essentially the first 5 hours of the original game into a 30-hour game. You find yourself progressing through the main story at a snail's pace. You play as Cloud, at first, who is a soldier turned mercenary that finds himself working for cash for what is essentially a terrorist organization. This terrorist organization is more commonly known as Avalanche, and this is where it starts to get a little bit complex. As I said previously, the story isn't black and white. Avalanche is in a guerrilla-like war with Shinra, who are the overlords of Midgar, so to speak. Midgar is a somewhat futuristic and kinda cyberpunkish city, and Shinra are the sole providers of electricity given that they have a monopoly on Mako, the planet's main source of energy. However, Avalanche's main mission is to protect the planet given that they believe that the exploitation of the planet for Mako by Shinra is what's killing it. You find yourself doing a job alongside Avalanche, which consists of blowing up a Mako reactor deep inside Midgar. Once you complete the first job with Avalanche and completely obliterate the reactor, Cloud begins to really familiarize himself more and more with Avalanche and the people they protect in Sector 7. After a secret mission with Cloud finds himself falling from the plate above Sector 5 and meets Aerith, a somewhat naive but sweet girl with a magic wand of some sorts. And this is where the story really began to drag for me. My main issue with this game's story is that there's a multitude of unnecessary padding story-wise. For example, once you meet Aerith formally, the amount of time it takes you to traverse back to Sector 7 from Sector 5 is astonishingly long. And you know, it makes sense because Midgar is supposed to be this futuristic and huge city, but there's not a lot going on story-wise. They got you picking up flowers and saving little children and just doing very unnecessary side missions which do not seem to add anything to the mix. Yes, I understand that a huge part of the game is character development, but this sort of padding is seen throughout the whole game. Unnecessary dialogue and cutscenes that amount to just some transitions into yet another battle scene. I found myself really having a hard time trying to differentiate between different chapters once I started to look back at the footage of my playthrough. A lot of the situations our heroes find themselves in just seem recycled, and they kinda end up feeling like a mushy mess of overplayed tropes. But I get it. I really do get it. I do not hate the reasoning behind this. Look, the developers, I believe, are doing this to better tell a truly rich story. In the original game, the whole Midgard section, which is basically this whole remake, is only 5 hours long. But they elongated this section to better flesh out the relationships between Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, Barrett, Wedge, Jesse, and Biggs. before they set out to the wider world. See? I learned all of their names by memory just to prove that I don't hate the game. Now, spoiler alert, I'm about to drop on you what is essentially the biggest spoiler in the whole remake. And it is the inclusion of these totally not taken from Harry Potter mystical creatures called whispers. This is by far the biggest deviation from the original game. These whispers are basically the game's way of breaking the fourth wall. Their sole purpose is to prevent fate from being changed or altered, which is basically the original game story. This is also the way that the game alters the storyline and opens up a myriad of possibilities with how the other parts of the story will be handled in future games. And I kind of like that. I kind of like that they really took their liberties with the retelling of the story. It is essentially the same story, but being told under very different circumstances. And now, it's not only the story that gets padded throughout the game. The unending and ever-present series of small crevices that the game has you ducking under and shimmying through has me believe that even these things were methods of making the game seem longer than it actually was. On the other hand, maybe this is just something that the developers used to create the illusion of a truly open and connected world to just bypass loading screens. Whatever the reasoning was behind these methods and these little hallways, they added to the game in a lot of unnecessary ways. Look, I understand. The original game has a loyal fan base. And look, I'm sure if they were to remake Ocarina of Time with modern day graphics and mechanics, I would want the game and story to last forever. So in a way, I understand why they padded the first part. And now that we're on the topic of gameplay, how about we talk mechanics? Thank God they changed them. Holy shit, I know. I am not a true fan of JRPGs, and I am especially not a fan of turn-based games. The way the developers handled the battle system has not only made the game a lot more fun and dynamic, but they've actually made it a lot more accessible. The game combined both action-adventure and turn-based elements to create something very unique. Players are able to do a flurry of light, heavy, and specialized attacks before they even fill their ATV meters. And you may ask yourself, what the f is an ATV meter? Believe me, I didn't know either. Well, once characters' ATV meters fill, the player has the ability to access advanced abilities and cast elemental spells that can be very effective towards certain enemies or that can aid their party members tremendously. These special abilities range from everything from defense, healing, fire spells, lightning spells, poison spells. No wait, poison healing. Almost got that wrong. Hell, you can even use items that'll turn you back to a human from a toad. I know, this game sometimes just doesn't make any sense. These commands are remnants of the turn-based mechanic of the original game, so it kinda plays homage to its roots. This combination of real-time combat and turn-based commands shouldn't work so well, but they do. They work so well that you'll find yourself being strategic even with your ATB, abilities, and spells obsessively. This little window down below on the screen becomes your best friend in battle. Be aware that your party members are extremely defensive and their ATB meters will fill up at the speed of death. It'll be so slow if you do not take control over them. And this is where my next point comes in. Man, I'm amazing at these segues. The way they approach the swapping between party members is something I think is very genius. Players have the ability to command their party members to use special abilities through the commands menu, or alternatively, players can take control of the party members and use them freely through the tap of a button. This is very helpful and a great strategy to better pressure and stagger your enemies. Believe me, if you're not constantly swapping between your party members, you will undoubtedly make the game harder for you and probably unbeatable. Don't quote me on that. I bet there's already speedrunners trying to beat the game with just Aerith. How? I don't know, do I look like a speedrunner? When I realized I could uppercut enemies with my girl Tifa, oh man, it was game over. For me that is. Because My dumbass didn't comprehend how materia works yet. Materia are small orbs of magical origins which grant the players everything from upgraded health, fire spells, and even extra materia slots to add to your armor and weapons. These little orbs of goodness can be maxed out with XP and are the driving force behind your success, given that some of these materia orbs grant you elemental abilities which can be very effective against certain enemies. This is where your assessed materia plays a huge role in, well, assessing your enemy's weaknesses and strengths. A huge setback, in my opinion, that a lot of video games have are skill trees. They can become somewhat of a chore, but the addition of being able to auto upgrade your weapons with the points the game gives you is a very nice addition. Look, don't get me wrong, I love the option to choose, but to me, skill trees will always be a chore. I don't know what's best for me. I don't know what's best to upgrade. Half of the time I'll just upgrade my health or my attack power. So being able to just hit auto on your weapon of choice and being rest assured that the weapon will upgrade automatically is just a great little touch, in my opinion. The way the whole combat and mechanics are handled in this game are just for my small brain. There's quite nothing I like more than shooting a gun as an intimidating black man. So, let's talk voiceovers. Like I said, I'm very good at segues. By the way, warning, here comes a little bit of a rant. Why? Why did they go through all the trouble of literally remaking the whole story, making up a whole new meta, adding alternate timelines, and basing the new storyline on the literal definition of changing the course of destiny, and not even bother to rewrite what are very dated characters? Look, do not get me wrong, the Final Fantasy VII character roster is some of the most diverse cast in video game history. Given Japan's homogeneous society, a lot of the writing in Final Fantasy VII, especially the writing for Barret,
or is he a loyal little doggy?
is based on what some may call a stereotype. And personally, this was a huge concern for me. Square Enix finally decided to give voices to what were basically voiceless protagonists for over 20 years. And they decided to lean hard on the stereotypes that a lot of black men face. The intimidating black man whose whole vocabulary consists of the words "damn right" and catchphrases is something that was really hard to swallow in today's world.
Them's fighting words.
This, of course, is a personal issue, but there were times when Barret's lines just felt a little too cartoony and completely took me out of the story being told. However, I will say that the voice acting in this game was surprisingly well done and casted for a Japanese game. None of the characters' voices fell out of place and they really fit the characters' backgrounds. Also, we got Badger from Breaking Bad voicing Wedge.
Why you have to be such a hard ass, bro?
I ain't your bro.
What else could we ask for? And now, to end on a very positive note, I will say that the graphics in this game are extremely gorgeous. This game is very detailed in its environments, its character models, its textures. Its lighting. We don't talk about textures here. Damn, that is a very bad looking note. Why are you going in? And I found myself in constant awe with the cutscenes of this game, especially with the techniques that developers used to smoothly transition between what were pre-rendered scenes and actual in-game scenes. The creativity in camera work just left me completely amazed. Especially when after a cutscene, the camera would travel to the back of Cloud and it would immediately throw you into the action. This was a very engaging way to let the player know that the world that they see and the world that they experience and interact with is very much the same. Sometimes it can feel a little bit disconnecting when the pre-rendered scenes look nothing like the in-game graphics. The details in the environment, such as the backgrounds and textures on the trains for example, help build a very unique world in which technology from Shinra completely ruled every single aspect of life. And this is where I think Final Fantasy VII Remake's biggest quality lives in, its details. You catch yourself watching what you think is a pre-rendered cutscene only to notice that the sword Cloud is swinging isn't his emblematic Buster Sword, and the material that you slotted a few minutes ago are actually in the scene. Little surprises like these are what really made me realize that a lot of love, sweat, tears, and probably blood went into the game from the developers. The lighting and the way it bounces off Cloud's sword is something I would find myself stopping to admire multiple times. Bro, I'm gonna be stopping a lot in this game just to like really appreciate every single detail, man. The details in the skin of the characters just had me wondering, how come I don't have any cute fucking freckles? The subtle threads from Barrett's frayed vest reminded me that, damn, I miss my jean vest. These small details really made me wonder why no photo mode was actually created for this game. And that is probably my only complaint regarding the graphics of the game. No photo mode. Maybe something about door textures as well, but why can't you see like a trail? Look at my sword. Look at my body. Like it leaves like a trail behind. You see that? Whatever. So, what do I think about this game? This game has great qualities, it has great upgrades as far as the mechanics, it makes it a lot more accessible to newer fans, and it also doesn't really insult longtime fans with the mechanics. It's a challenging game. Found myself dying constantly, but it never really felt unfair. It was all because of my fault, because either I didn't assess the enemy and I didn't know its weaknesses, or I probably just didn't have the right material equipped. I think this is not the Final Fantasy VII you probably remember from 1997. This is more of an homage to what your imagination created in your head about the world and story of Final Fantasy VII. I feel this game really took what probably a lot of Final Fantasy VII players back in 1997 thought what Midgar and the characters would be like. It pays respect to the beloved memory that is this game to the fans of the original, and it invites newer audiences to embrace a game whose story is still yet to be written. Maybe, kinda, I don't know. There's a ton of theories online of where the story might go, and they're all just completely wild. So I'm not a big fan of ratings, but I will give this game a 7.8 out of 10, and that's a passing grade. Folks, I've been True Fernie, and this is essentially my second review I've ever done of a game. I think I will be doing more of this content because I love giving opinions on that I don't know about. So expect more of these reviews in the future. And with that, I want to leave off the question to you. Have you played Final Fantasy VII Remake? Do you think it does a well job of telling the story of the original game? Do you think the direction Square Enix is taking the series to is a mistake? Or do you welcome this change of pacing and story elements from Square Enix? Let me know down below. If you like this video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. If you don't like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs down. Every bit helps. Links to my socials are down below. Please make sure to follow me on Twitch, where I stream almost 4 days a week. Monday, Wednesday, sometimes Friday, I do not promise that, and Sundays. Please take care of each other, but most importantly, take care of yourself. Peace.